Hi, I'm Steve Pond from TheWrap. We're here at our virtual Sundance Film Festival studios, and I'm pleased to welcome the writer director of Resurrection, Andrew Semans. Andrew, welcome. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
congratulations on your Sundance premiere of a thoroughly creepy film. Um, you know, I'm not quite sure how one would sum up this film, but I guess, it's sort of the story of a very driven professional woman played by Rebecca Hall, whose teenage daughter is about to go off to college. And then this mysterious figure from her past, who is played by Tim Roth, shows up and very strange things start happening. Or maybe it's just a really bad case of separation anxiety. I'm just wondering what led you to this story?
Well, let me just story. When I'm trying to think of things to write about, when I'm trying to think of stories, I often find it fruitful to just say to myself, what scares me? What's something that really is terrifying to me? And in this case, I was doing that exercise, and I started thinking about fears around parenting, specifically fears around keeping your child. Keeping your child safe and preventing them from harm or victimization, and the fear that you might fail your child and fail in your fundamental duty as a parent. And this is something that that certainly frightens me, and it led me to thinking about the parental vigilante subgenre of films, which is very popular and enduring. And I was drawn to tell a story in that space, although I didn't quite know how to do it. And as I was trying to develop this idea, someone I knew became involved in a very unhealthy relationship with a rather controlling and manipulative and toxic person. And I was witnessing this relationship firsthand, and I was doing my best to try and understand that relationship, and doing my best to help them in any way I could. And I became very interested and terrified by the techniques that these kind of toxic controlling people use to manipulate their victims, and how they create these intense emotional bonds. And the more I looked into that, the more it began to inform the story, and it all kind of went from there.
Mm-hmm. Right. So do you have kids? Were there, certain, fears of parenting of your own that came into
I
this?
do not. I will be having a child soon. So it was all speculative when I wrote the script, but it was something that still felt very palpable and very present and very real to me. And something when I anticipated being a parent, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be in a state of constant terror around the safety of my child. And of course, in talking to friends of mine who are parents, they will always say, yes, I live in constant terror around the safety of my child. And what a way to live, but something that so many of us do, of course.
Right. Well, I think it'll be interesting when your future child goes off to college. That'll be an interesting.
I'm gonna be terrified.
Yeah. So you have, in the lead roles, you have Rebecca Hall and Tim Roth. I mean, that's pretty much that's a pretty impressive lineup to
Yeah.
To be acting your script. I mean, do you have to give them many notes?
No. Oh God, no. I mean, gosh, in particular with Rebecca. Rebecca is an amazing actor, an amazing person, and she's so prepared and so insightful and smart and so committed. It became very clear early on that I had to do almost nothing. That she understood the script and the characters so well, and came so ready to perform, that frequently we wouldn't have any discussion at all about a scene, that we would just light it and roll the camera, and she would perform, and I would just be a very appreciative observer and we would do it a few times, and it was incredibly easy because she brought it all with her. And so no, I just with both of them, I really just tried to get out of their way. They
Right.
are brilliant and so experienced, and so but yeah, I could just step back. It was a real luxury.
Right. So did Rebecca do this on after doing her film Passing, which she directed and premiered
Yes,
here at
yeah,
Sundance?
we shot the movie back in summer of 2021, and she had already completed Passing, or was just about done with Passing. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, she has an extraordinary scene in the first part of the movie where it's set sort of in a darkened office, and it's basically a long confessional scene where she describes this toxic relationship that has re-entered her life. I mean, was that written just as basically one long monologue, the way it's done?
yes, yeah, that was the plan, and it was a real, it was very risky. It felt very risky. It felt very scary to me. It was something I was really excited to do when I wrote the script. I love monologues in movies and on the stage, and I wanted to have this monologue, and I knew for it to work, we'd need an absolutely incredible actor and one who was fearless. But after working with Rebecca a little bit, any fears I had were put to rest, because I knew she would come in and I knew she would nail it. And she did. She came in. She did it twice. She didn't drop a line either time, and both takes were brilliant. And that was all we needed.
Mhm.
Um, and I have no idea. I had no idea if she was nervous about it. I think she was excited to do it. I think Rebecca is so courageous that any challenge you throw in front of her, she'll just dig right into it and make it work. Um, but yeah, it was sort of high risk, high reward, but
Right.
she landed it.
I mean, it's also filmed there are no camera tricks or anything going on. I mean,
No,
basically,
there.
you set up the camera in a room that is so dark, we just basically see her face, and you let her go. I mean, did you have that in mind always, how you wanted that to look?
Yeah, I didn't want to cut. I wanted it all in one. And the camera does move a little bit. There's this incredibly slow push in.
Mhm.
But other than that, it's shot about as simply as you can, and it's just Rebecca's face. And so, but I just felt if we cut into that monologue, or at a certain point there was some discussion of including flashbacks into the monologue, but I just felt that would ruin it. It would have to live or die based on the script, and but most importantly the quality of the performance.
Mhm.
And so it was always meant to be very, very simple.
Yeah. I mean, as an audience member, it feels like by the end, it stops feeling like she's talking to the other character in the scene, and it starts feeling like she's just talking to you.
Yeah, well, I hope so. That was definitely the idea.
Hmm. I mean, one of the other things that I thought was really well done about this was the sound design, because you're kind of taking us into her head, and her sanity is up for grabs for a lot of this film, and I feel like you accomplished a lot of that through the use of sound. I mean, what were the keys there?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like our sound mixer, sound designer, Rick Schnupp, is really, really brilliant, and often sound designers and mixers and editors don't get the credit that they deserve. But you're absolutely right. In our approach to this movie, the movie is shot very simply. It's the visual world is quite grounded and realistic and naturalistic, but the sound is much more expressionistic. It's much more subjective, and especially in periods of extreme emotion, when Margaret is especially agitated, the sound takes on a very subjective um, style or space. And so we had a lot of fun trying to figure out how to get into her head through the sound design while staying grounded in reality in the visuals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there is always a sense of, well, it looks like all of this is really happening. This looks real, but how much of this can we believe? At what point are we just in her head, and at what point are we in the real world? I mean, how important is it to keep the audience off balance? And do you have it in your head exactly what's real and what's not?
Um, I that's a challenging question. I, of course, have strong opinions about this, and especially in the third act of the movie, when things go a little crazy, it becomes fairly ambiguous what is real and what isn't, and that ambiguity is intentional. I really wanted to, especially in that space, leave it up to the audience to determine what was most interesting and what was most satisfying and apt for them in that part. The remainder of the movie, I feel like we're trying to create a situation where we are feeling her emotion and feeling her experience and feeling her subjectivity. And if that does create a sense of imbalance, a sense of untrustworthiness, that's fine. And that is hopefully stimulating to an audience. But how vital it is to the experience of the movie and understanding the movie, I don't quite know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you what you think is real and what's not, because part of the fun.
Yeah, I mean, well, I could, but I feel like that would steal some of the fun of the movie.
Yeah. So did you shot this during the pandemic?
Yes, we did.
How much did that affect what you were able to do?
Well, it was definitely very challenging. It just anytime you make an independent movie, it's always very challenging in terms of all practical things and in terms of time. And then shooting during COVID and all the COVID rules and protocols and things that you have to do to stay safe just adds another level of complication and hassle on top of that. And so, but we had to do that, and we did it effectively. There were no cases of COVID in cast or crew, and it was just it didn't radically alter the way the movie was made. It just made it a little bit more difficult to do everything, a little bit less comfortable in a situation that was already pretty uncomfortable. But we did what probably every movie in the festival did this year. You incorporate it as best you can, and you work through it.
Yeah, right. Besides besides dealing with that, I mean, were there other things about the film that you found, particularly challenging?
For me, the things that were challenging were, even though it's a very challenging movie dramatically, it's a very taxing movie emotionally on the actors, particularly on Rebecca. Those dramatic challenges proved to be, thanks to the professionalism and experience and preparation of the cast, those things all proved to be much easier than I thought they would be, because I could trust in my cast so much. The things that proved particularly challenging actually were just things that I had never really dealt with, which were stunts and VFX and violence and prosthetics and things like this. Is just something that I'd only made a few shorts and one feature before this, and I'd never known how that works and how much time and consideration and care and just how difficult it is to do those things right. And so for me as a director, those were the hardest things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it doesn't show. It feels like this is a movie that's made by somebody who knows what he wants and knows how to get it. So,
well, thank you very much.
Yeah. So, congratulations on that, and thanks very much for joining us here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.